We're back continuing our conversation with Blake Christian, tax partner of Holthouse Carlin, also CPA, and also very much involved in the community. He's the current head of Rotary, Long Beach Rotary Club. And just tell us your general philosophy of business people giving back and being involved in the community.
Well, you know, I feel it's a natural. I've done it for most of my career, but you know, the business community is filled with you know, very smart people with, you know, great vocations that can add some value to these not-for-profits and some of the underprivileged. And so through Rotary, you know, we have a mentoring program where we work very closely with the high schools as well as the elementary schools. We've given over 200,000 books to the elementary schools under our Rotary Reads program. And we give over $250,000 a year in scholarships to Long Beach City College as well as Cal State Long Beach.
Wow. Well, you are the current president of Long Beach Rotary, and Rotary is a 93-year-old organization, Rotary International, and as you mentioned, it helps kids and also veterans, I understand.
Right. We you know, definitely are tied in with the veterans community. We have the largest veterans community in the country in Southern California, and so and we have some great Rotarians that are veterans, and so that's a soft spot for us for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know you meet Wednesdays at noon at the Queen Mary, and I've been to some of those meetings, and they're quite robust.
Right. Yeah, we have a good time.
And you're also past president of the Chamber of Commerce.
That's correct. That's correct.
What was that like?
You know, working with Randy Gordon, you know, I learned a tremendous amount from him, and so that was very helpful, and that also developed relationships statewide with the California Chamber of Commerce, as well as many of the legislators who I continue to work with on the enterprise zone and other programs. So it's been an honor to serve in both of these positions.
The 30 to 40-year-olds that are coming up next underneath you, do they see it the same way?
I would say actually the Gen X and the millennials probably see it even more clearly than my generation. Their level of community service is humbling. Now they don't always have the financial resources that some of us have, but they make up for it tenfold in the hours that are willing to put in, and so we are very well positioned in the future, I think, in Long Beach.
As a professor here on campus, and by the way, we should mention that you are an alum of Long Beach State.
A very proud alum. I credit most of my success to my education here.
Well, that's wonderful. We love to hear that. But I take your point on that Generation Y. I'm not sure what age group that is, but the younger kids get it with community service.
Absolutely, and they want to be involved. And we have two Rotaract clubs, one on campus, Cal State Long Beach, and then we have a community Rotaract club. And pound for pound, these organizations got their fingers in everything, so they're great.
And I'd just like to again publicly thank you. You and your firm were the first underwriters for the Long Beach State Distinguished Speaker Series last year. We brought Juan Williams to campus, and Blake and his own foundation and the firm stepped up and were a major underwriter of that wonderful event.
Well, we'll be doing it again. It was a great experience, and Juan was wonderful.
Juan was wonderful, yes. And now, you know, when you see someone on television who you met in person, you feel an additional personal connection, and so it was a great honor to meet with him. Well, at a time of budgetary difficulties that we're going through now, there is some light on the horizon with this younger generation, and I know it's tough for them to get jobs right now as they graduate, but they've learned the importance of community involvement.
Absolutely.
So we want to get up close and personal in the next segment with Blake and talk about some special things. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back after these messages. We are back continuing our conversation with Blake Christian, partner of Holthouse Carlin. Firm has 250 employees, $65 million in revenue, the fastest growing CPA firm in this area. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And with an office right here in Long Beach.
Correct.
You were mentioning during the break that you shared a cubicle with Phil Holthouse, one of the named partners. Cubicle sounds so confining. Is it tough work starting in a big accounting firm?
You know, we started with back then it was the Big 8, now it's the Big 4 firms, and so they always treated the employees pretty well. They worked us hard but fed us well.
Kind of like the big law firms.
Right.
You get paid well, but they take their pound of flesh.
Absolutely. But yeah, we shared a cubicle together, stayed in touch, and ended up, putting the firm together 20 years ago now.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you're an alum of Long Beach State, and it's great to see. And there was a good accounting program, a good business school when you went through it.
Absolutely, and we hire a lot of people out of the accounting program here.
That's wonderful. Well, in an article I read about you, you said one of your mentors, or your mentor, was someone who I know well, Skip Kiesel, and his law firm. And just tell us a little bit about Skip and why you mentioned him in that context.
And when I had started in the LA office of KPMG, and then came down here and we opened an office in Long Beach, not too far from Kiesel, Young and Logan. And so we developed a real good relationship about 30 years ago. And so from that point forward, Skip has always been very gracious, very helpful to our firm, as well as his partners. And but I just have learned so much, business ethics and how to treat clients and client service, and also more importantly maybe is the community service aspects of being in business in Long Beach. And I just wouldn't want to work anywhere else.
Skip's law firm, Kiesel, Young and Logan, really does business the old-fashioned way as a law firm, and everyone is treated within the firm with respect, starting with the receptionists and the assistants and everybody. And it's really, sadly, it's almost a relic of how things were in the past.
Right. And he really drives home the fact that it's so important that the type of person, you don't hire a resume, you hire a personality and somebody with the right business ethics. And on the client side too, you have to be, he always says that you're judged not by the clients that you accept, but the clients that you don't bring on board.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
And although attorneys, and as an attorney I know this, have a duty to faithfully represent the interests of their client, you don't have to take a given client.
That's correct.
And well, that's a whole nother discussion. But let's speak for a moment about the importance of ethics. I teach ethics as well as law. Every accredited business school in America now is required to teach ethics as part of the undergraduate and graduate program. I don't know whether that was there when you were here or not. I think it was just kicking in the 80s when there were the abuses, the Michael Milken and those things, and the powers that be decided, well, maybe we're not teaching enough ethics in the business schools if some business people are doing these bad things. But so we try and hopefully have some impact, but ultimately it goes to the character of the person themselves, does it not, as to how they behave?
It does, and it's and it's just the really giving people the case studies, and because it's the lines are very blurred. When you're in the middle of a transaction or a client relationship, people, if you haven't heard of the fact patterns in the past, sometimes it's hard for an inexperienced person to really, decide what is right. And half the battle is making sure that they raise the issue, take it upstream, and obviously
that ethics is at the table as a point of discussion.
Right, and you're doing great work here with the Euclid Center, and so it's a great model. And I think Long Beach, has a very, very highly ethical business setting and business people here. So,
well, I firmly believe that ethics starts at the top, and the head of any organization sets the ethical tone. It's reflected in the hires below him or her and going downward, and most importantly, the behavior of the head of the firm. And you can have a great ethics code of conduct. The Enron code of conduct read beautifully on the wall, but they weren't walking the walk. And someone told me, and you might want to comment on this, that two key indicators of the values of a firm is who they hire and why, and who they fire and why.
Absolutely, and that, again, you can make that case for both the employee base as well as the client base. And if you have a client that has some ethical challenges, you're not going to get rid of a client because they fall on hard times, but you should get rid of a client that has some ethical challenges. And and money and greed can take, and I've seen it, you can take a very law-abiding, highly ethical person, and when they fall on tough economic times, and I think we've seen this through the credit meltdown, you will see people do some things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. And as a CPA, we're kind of the front line on many of those issues, where somebody will come to us and ask us questions, and we do have to set them straight sometimes that you may be able to not be breaking the law, but there's an ethical issue there, and we can't participate in that.
And so in appropriate cases, if they're not willing to follow that advice, you sever your relationship with that client.
Right. Absolutely.
Amen to that.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll be back with the rest of the show after these messages. We're back. We're talking about ethics. Blake, would you agree that there are really two questions to ask in facing a decision? One, is it legal, obviously?
Right.
But that's not enough. You also have to ask and answer the question, is it ethical?
Absolutely. And a lot of people will just stop at is it legal?
And you get into trouble.
Yep.
I mean, the goal in life is not to conform your behavior to the minimal requirements of the criminal law. You have to go above that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And people do get into trouble, and as you were mentioning, maybe there's a little violation, a small bite, and that works, and then a bigger bite, and the bigger bite, and eventually you're in no man's land.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And even, we were talking about the not-for-profit world, and unfortunately, some of the checks and balances in that sector are not as tight, and you're very trusting. You have volunteers, and
yes.
Embezzlements and improprieties can happen just as often in that as it can in the business world. So you have to kind of be on your guard in all sectors.
Well, thank you for joining us here on Straight Talk. Thank you for all you do for the community on an ongoing basis. It really makes a difference.
Well, it's an honor to work in this community, and you have so many people giving back, and I can just hope that the next generation keeps it up, and they haven't disappointed so far. They're really very, very encouraging in the community service aspects.
Amen to that. Thank you at home for joining us. Please be with us next week for the next edition of Straight Talk. Good night, everyone.
Straight Talk has been brought to you by Southern California Edison, the Press Telegram, and remember, Straight Talk is viewable worldwide 24/7 at straighttalktv.com.